cabbage buns. Cabbage buns!
Hi everyone, I'm Kenya.
And I'm Savannah, and welcome to The Hungry Ladybug. This is day 4 of the 12 dishes of Ukrainian Christmas. And today we're making pyrizhky, aka cabbage bun.
They're very delicious. They're basically a lovely soft bun with a sauerkraut filling. There's construction happening outside, which is very frustrating, but we don't know if or when it will stop, so sorry about the noise.
We're in a new spot today because I want to show off my new candy cane lights in front of my lovely bookshelf. But anyway, I hope you follow along and let's go. So these are the scuffles which we made yesterday. I'll post the video for them down below. But they're just so good. We've eaten so many of them already. And I'm just gonna have one with my coffee right now. Okay, so I have all the ingredients laid out here. We have the ingredients for the dough, for the bun part, and then the ingredients for the filling, which is just pretty much butter and sauerkraut. The only thing that we don't have is the vegetable oil, and we're just gonna pop to the grocery store and get some before we come back and have a lovely little afternoon baking some cabbage buns. If you do have a food processor, it makes chopping up the sauerkraut a lot easier, but you can always do it by hand. Okay, so we're just heading back from the grocery store, and we almost forgot the oil, but luckily we remembered it in time. And guess what we found for really cheap?
Sour cabbage head.
We found
a head of sour cabbage.
A whole head of sour cabbage.
And it was like less than $3.
And one time our mom paid like $15 for one because we were so desperate and we needed it.
Yeah, so we'll be using this for the holubstry.
For the
Sour cabbage rolls.
Okay, so we're back. We have the oil, and now we're just going to get started with the dough. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but the recipe we're taking is from Claudia's cookbook, which I mentioned in our announcement video, and I'll post a link to her blog down below. She posts lots of nice Ukrainian recipes, so definitely check her out. Okay, so you probably want to get the biggest bowl you have. It needs to hold at least 4 cups of flour, or if you're doubling the recipe, 8. And then you're going to want to take your yeast. She knows what the word yeast is. Her favorite treat is nutritional yeast. Not this kind of yeast, honey. Do you want some yeast? Should we give her some? Where'd you put it? Little bit for you, and a little bit for Badger. Come on. He has to be shown sometimes because he doesn't quite understand things. Look. Okay, so while we're waiting for the yeast to do its thing, come to life, we are going to have some beer, and this is a salted chocolate porter from Steamworks Brewing Company. Cheers! Cheers! Or in Ukrainian, дай Boże, or something like that.
Yeah, we don't really know.
So the marble countertop is actually pretty cold, so the yeast hasn't been as warm of an environment as we were hoping, so it's not as puffy. So we're just gonna stick it in the oven for a few minutes, just with the oven light on. It's a nice
kind of a good trick for making the yeast happy. Definitely better than a cold countertop. Our mother has a dangerous story. Never turn the oven on and try to remember to turn it off after 5 minutes. You will forget there will be fire. Just my mother's experience.
Okay, so this is kind of what your activated yeast should be looking like. It'll have puffed up quite a bit. Okay, so now we've combined the wet ingredients and the dry ingredients, and we kind of have a loose ball of dough, and we're going to turn it out onto a well-floured counter and knead it. And you want to knead this quite thoroughly. And the dough at this point is quite wet, but it's going to pick up a lot of the flour as you're kneading it, so it should be a pretty good consistency. By the time you're finished kneading it, will make it a bit more easy to work with. It'll make the gluten form, or whatever. So they say on Great British Bake Off. So I'm using a technique that I learned when I was working with clay, which is called the ram's head. I don't know if it's appropriate for baking, but it's the only way I know how. And it's quite fun. And I imagine that it looks like a cute little, like, lammy, like with his little horns. How do you do the technique? Yeah, so once it's in a ball, you kind of want to grab the edges and bring the heels of your palms inward. So you're kind of like twisting it in from the outside. Pushing. And pushing it forward. I'm probably not doing it exactly right, but something along those lines. I mean, I don't think it matters. So they use this for clay? Yeah, I don't think it matters. You have to really knead your clay. Like, I don't think it takes nearly as long to knead dough. Right now in my hands, I'm holding an enormous ball of dough.
Oh my goodness, okay.
And hey, guess what, Mom?
What?
Guess what?
What?
At the grocery store, guess what we found? For less than $3.
Halloumi.
No. Guess. It has to do with Ukrainian food.
Oh no, cabbage roll. Sour cabbage?
Yeah, sour cabbage. Okay, so while you have your dough rising for around half an hour, you can prepare your filling, which is the most exciting part because sauerkraut. We have ours with the oven light again, and you just cover it with a bit of saran wrap on top so that it doesn't dry out, and it's puffing up in there. Okay, so if you have a food processor, this makes it a little bit easier, but you can chop everything by hand if you have to. So we're just going to start by putting half of a small onion into the food processor. I'm just going to chop it. So we just toss the onions in the pan here so they don't get too chopped up. So now you're going to want to take about half a jar of sauerkraut. So we just have the baked sauerkraut. I don't know how widely available this is. It's usually available in Canada just because we have such a kind of Eastern European community. Sauerkraut can be quite stringy. You need to chop it into smaller pieces, especially with the buns. And you're going to want to drain it pretty well. First, you want to get as much of the liquid out as possible. And you don't want the mixture that you're putting in the buns to be wet because it's because then the dough won't cook properly. Okay, so now once you've chopped your sauerkraut and your onion, you can put it into a big saucepan, and you're going to want to add a fair amount of butter. This is only 1/8 of a cup, but it looks like way more. I mean, 1/8 of a cup of butter is kind of like an enormous amount of butter, isn't it? But it's not enormous for Ukrainian food. And then we're going to season it too with salt, just pepper. There's enough salt in the sauerkraut already. And yes, we're going to cook this down until the onions are nice and soft and the sauerkraut kind of softens a bit as well. So Anna has made us Manhattans to drink while we're making the cabbage buns. So cheers. I think there's some kind of political connotation to that particular cheers, but I have no idea what it is. I guess that would tell us something about our grandparents.
Anyway, so we started making the buns already. So Savannah's going to do a little demonstration for you about how to fill and fold the buns.
Right, okay. So first thing you want to do is just to take a small pinch of dough. Should be maybe about this big. And kind of roll it into a ball, and then you're going to flatten it into a small disc around the palm of your hand. I kind of like to stretch it across my knuckles, just because sometimes it can be a little bit elastic. So it should end up looking something like this. Make sure there's room to kind of fill it. And then you're going to take a small amount of sauerkraut, probably around a teaspoon. And you want to make sure you don't overfill it, because if you've ever made dumplings before, and we've made many a pierogi in our time, you know that if there's any sauerkraut sticking to the edge, then that's a very bad thing. So you want to make sure that, and it's happening to me right now, so anyway, so you want to pinch it. I find that this is the best technique, is to take it and pinch it across, then pinch it over again, like that, and once more, and then one final time. And then you kind of just, that's the general idea, and you should end up with something a little like this.
And then you put it with the seal downward. And yeah, we're going to keep going, and we'll stick them in the oven soon, the first batch. So here are all our beautiful buns waiting to go in the oven. Lots of filling left over, of course, but we're going to stick them in right now, and then they bake for about, what, 10 to 12 minutes per batch?
Until they're lightly browned on top.
Yeah, like a nice light brown color.
I think you can do an egg wash, but I wouldn't recommend it.
And they should rise to be bigger than this. So we'll see what happens. Okay.
So elegant in my flour coated press. Don't wear black when you're baking, folks. Okay, we're putting them in. We have been...
I was expecting you to do that with a cocktail in one hand and the buns in the other. You think you can manage that? Oh my god, she's gonna do it, ladies.
There's hair on mine.
And they're in. We don't have proper baking trays, but you just have to be inventive.
Timer is it? I was just going to say that usually when our grandmother, or great-grandmother rather, Alvina would host these like giant family reunions, there would just be like an assembly line of women making pierogies, like, or these or anything, just like dumpling assembly line.
So we're kind of just sitting on the floor in front of the oven waiting
for them.
It's
not a good idea to open the oven like this. We just wanted to show you quickly.
This is not brown enough, but as you can see, they've risen quite nicely. They're not very flat, which if they're flat, that means they're overproofed. Doesn't mean they're going to taste bad. So I'm about to take the first group of cabbage buns out of the oven. We have different sizes of containers, so they're not cooking quite evenly, but this will give you an idea of how they're supposed to look like.
And they've taken, what, about 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Maybe more, 17? But this is basically the perfect color for cabbage buns. This is a nice golden color.
So we have even more buns out of the oven. And they're just looking so good. I can't wait to eat them. They smell amazing. And we have just a few more batches to go in. So they did make quite a few. I'd say around like 30, 35, something like that. Obviously, I can't count. I'm an art historian. Don't hold me to any math.
You're right, it is 30.
It's 30. I was right.
I have to use a calculator to confirm this. So we've been very good. We haven't eaten any yet, so we've been getting very eager. This last batch to finally be done, and it finally is done. And they look beautiful and golden brown, and we're going to take them out of the oven right now. Yeah, so that's it. If yours look like this, I think that you've probably succeeded. I'm pretty happy with the way that they look.
I'm so happy.
They really shouldn't be like touching like this, but we just didn't have the right kind of baking trays and stuff like that, so we really crammed them on there because you really don't want to leave them out and let them overprove. You know?
Better slightly conjoined than overproofed.
Yeah,
Is our motto.
And also, like, we're just enjoying them and eating them, and that's the main thing, is how they taste.
Are you my little pyrizhky? You're the pyrizhky? Is it the cabbage bun?
Okay, so here are the ones that have been out for a little while. These are too hot to handle.
Yeah.
And we're going to try some.
But if your family is Ukrainian, you'll know how big of a feast it is. So it's not like this is really a ridiculous amount of cabbage buns.
However, it's not just, we're not the only ones that are going to be eating this, because we're going to take the leftovers over to our parents when a few days we're leaving to go visit them for Christmas. And also, if there are leftovers, our mother will feed them to seagulls.
Yes, the seagulls are important to remember this time of year. Remember to feed your seagulls this Christmas.
Cheers.
Cheers! Cabbage bun cheers.
Show what they look like inside. Mmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh my god. It's perfect. Claudia does it again.
It's a pretty sweet dough, which is nice to contrast with the sourdough. I mean the sauerkraut.
These would be a very nice substitute instead of a roll for Christmas dinner, for example, because they have a little sauerkraut surprise.
You should just add sauerkraut to your Christmas dinner and see how it turns out, because
To everything.
you're missing out if you don't like the sauerkraut. So we hope that you enjoyed this video about cabbage buns. We highly recommend you make them.
Check out Claudia's cookbook.
Yes, check out Claudia's cookbook. And we hope that you join us tomorrow for day 5 of the 12 dishes of Ukrainian Christmas. Bye! See, even cats like them.